Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Deep Thoughts on this rainy day in my garage. It's going to be raining in California quite a bit over this spring phase, and so I figured, well, we got to do something. Can't let the rain take away our shows, right? So let's see. I was thinking about this thing where the show's about destiny. I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe I have a show about destiny in season 1. I can't remember. If I do, we'll call this Destiny Part 2. But I started thinking about it, and I'm helping some friends out with their careers. Just doing a little bit of, mentoring and kind of just being that sounding board that every human being in the world needs every once in a while. And I started to think about what is destiny? It's such a romanticized thing that we talk about. It's in movies almost senselessly. It's like when you read an early poet's work, they use the word ecstasy. You just want to throw up in your mouth. What is destiny? Is it a person, place, or thing? Is it a career? Is it a way of life? Is it multidimensional and in various forms of life? Destiny always seems to be romanticized as this multidimensional final gestalt location where you end your life. You have the self, the family, and work, and it's all perfectly balanced. Every day you wake up, you do the exact same thing within reason, and you are 100% content. Not 99.9, but 100% content. It's one of these situations that it's so damn good that you can't imagine allowing a single atom to wiggle out of place, right? Destiny. Destiny is also portrayed in movies as a sort of finite moment in time, this thing you need to do, of which when over, I guess you've accomplished your destiny. Luke Skywalker killing Darth Vader, McFly marrying whatever her name was. Now, I'm not sure too many people actually sit around managing their life through the lens of some apparition called destiny. So what's the exercise of this, or what's the point of this exercise of reviewing destiny? Well, what if you could get it? What if it did exist? But because the definition of it is so ambiguous, so marred by Hollywood storylines written by weirdos, produced by children, that we really have lost its meaning. Or we all simply take a big deep breath and we come to the conclusion that destiny does not exist, and that we shouldn't manage our lives by it. We should not grade ourselves in life with destiny in mind. There simply is life, and it's a moment-to-moment battle. No career lasts forever for most people. And if something lasted forever, it sort of seems strange, but that would be destiny. Let's say that you were to trek across Europe and you were to go to ancient Alba, Scotland, and you reach the borderline of Alba, and you're like, this is it. This is my destiny. All right, well, you don't have any hut, food, family, army, whatever. Maybe you brought a little bit of people with you. But you're 30 years old, and you're like, this is it. I'm here. And it's like, okay, we'll go. And then you have a sort of a categorization. When someone asks you about your life 10, 20, 30 years later, you say, what brought you to Alba? And you go, destiny. I was destined to live here. This is where my people are from. They're like, hey, you never been here before. It's like, I don't know. I just feel it. Seems pretty reasonable, right? There's a few businesses out there. Well, I'll share one of the destiny jobs / companies that I wanted to work for, and then let's dissect how I thought that was the case. I wanted to work for Electronic Arts the second I walked through the door, and the reason why, because they were in their San Mateo office at the time, which was a lot sexier than their current Redwood Shores location. I walked in the room. I walked into, gosh, I forgot which floor it was, third or fourth floor, I think. And it was just really cool. The folks had done an amazing job making all the cubicles look cool, hanging stuff from the ceiling. The carpet was really awesome. I mean, I know it sounds funny, but it was like a purple carpet with crazy shapes in it. And then it had like all the cubes were super modern and awesome. You know, the vending machines are all 25 cents. But then the games, man. The first thing I did when I walked in there in 1993 was play Doom with my buddies. And I just looked around. I said, "Oh my God, this is a place that one could work. One could come here, and instead of creating a video game in my garage, my programmer sitting out the kitchen table eating Stouffer's dinners for evening food and what was it, garlic twisty bread or whatever from Caesar's in the afternoon because we're broke. I could come to this place, be surrounded by like-minded people, and charge forward." And so it became that feeling, that unbelievable feeling of I want to work here. Disney Studios is another place where tens of thousands of people consider it their destiny to either achieve some sort of position there or to have work there. I know quite a few people that have been through that one. Movie studios. If you ever visit a lot, you can immediately feel that destiny feeling. You know, I want to work in a place where we're creating television and film constantly. And what's always interesting is you go on those lots, not so much Disney, not so much EA, but you go on a film lot and you see people exhausted. You see them kind of walk around as if they could give a shit if they worked there. It's very, very interesting. And I really think it comes down to their work schedule. I think it's just grueling. Like they have to get up at the crack of dawn, stay up, 14 to 18 hours and go home. And after, several months, if not years of that, the preciousness of that job starts to sink in. In the movie Back to the Future, we had Marty McFly, his father. I guess the father's, maybe he's junior shit. I can't remember what the father's name was. But anyway, he writes his poem, runs outside, and says, "You are my density." But what he did was a really interesting arc that typically, I don't see people do it that often, which is to bound a human being to destiny in a romantic way. Now, mentoring with someone, or being mentored by someone, could be viewed as very destiny-oriented. I've been extremely fortunate to be mentored by some of the best minds that I respect personally, that developed and crafted my personal life, my personal childhood into manhood through film, through design, through special effects. And to know these people now and have them mentored me for at least 10 to 20 years, depending on who we're talking about here, it's huge. But I don't know if I would ever say it was my destiny. And I'll tell you why. Destiny sort of implies either a book of life analogy where, God has written it in a book and you're just simply executing a script. How fucking boring is that, What the fuck would be the point of living? Or somehow you deserve it. You're entitled to it. It is meant for you. And you'll see, usually ancient scripts scripts written in Hollywood that have a period piece back to ancient times where two people are destined to come together. Even Ghostbusters had the gatekeeper and the keymaster sort of thing. These Cthulhu children that needed a screw in New York. But there's obviously more serious takes on that. But I don't think personally it was my destiny to necessarily be in anyone's life. Not even my kid's life. I don't really feel like I'm meant to be her dad. I was lucky. To be her father. So why do an episode on destiny then? if I'm so poo-pooing it, right? Well, I think it's to get to the bottom of the metaphysics of what we've convinced ourselves that destiny is. Its value in our life. But if it is truly nothing more than a mythos, it's very important we know that as well, right? What if it doesn't exist? What if it's some construct we build in our minds to convince us that any one finite moment in time is more correct and more right than other moments in time? We know those moments happen. When you find someone you love and you hold them and you look in their eyes and they're looking at your eyes, looking into your eyes, excuse me. I don't know if you can look at someone's eyes. I guess you can. But you realize that amazing feeling where they dig you just as much as you dig them. There are few feelings that can surpass that connection, even if it's only for a short time. That's obviously what Hollywood sells. I mean, why not? They're just telling stories that are fictional. There's no real crime in it. They're just trying to create these bigger-than-life moments that perhaps never really exist for most of us. Or they exist 4 or 5 times, and that's it. You pay money to have someone make you believe that moment just occurred on a screen, whether it be your television screen or a cinema. But now what if we could figure out, between the two of us, that it is actually sort of a myth? My guess is that it might remove a little bit of burden from some of our lives. We might just go, oh gosh, I'm not missing out on this finite moment in time that if I miss, I've totally failed. That moment of destiny that will never come around again is missed, and there's only one of them. Now, some of you will immediately think of the correlation of opportunity. Opportunity. Well, we know what opportunities are like. Yes, some of the greatest opportunities in our lives will come and go, and there will not be a second chance to have that opportunity again. Any guy that has ever been in public and you see a pretty girl and you think you've caught eyes, or you absolutely did catch eyes, and there seems to be this kind of electricity between the two of you, but for whatever reason, neither one of you felt like you had the confidence to walk up to the other person and say, hi. If you walk out of that building, you'll never see that person again unless you're in a really tiny town. But now, opportunities would be a way to manage your life, to really take advantage of them as they come up, but to recognize them as such, as opposed to this grand vision of destiny. Now, I'm not going to completely deconstruct the value of destiny to you, but I'm disassembling it in front of you and hopefully putting it back together such that it has a slightly more refined meaning to you. I believe destiny is a word that is comfortably used in conversation to find something special in you that wouldn't be found if we merely talked about opportunities. When I sit down with someone and I try to help them understand perhaps what career change that they should consider, you will often hear me say, destiny. And, it's interchangeable with another word, purpose. And if you watch my episode on love, or you watch me or listen to me talk about love, I think purpose is love and love is purpose. But I'm going to throw you a purpose that might be interesting. So if I ask you, what do you feel like is your destiny in the world? It's really like saying, what is the overall vector of thrust in your life? And a lot of people, when I come at them from a career standpoint, they think I'm talking about more career discussions, and what I'm really talking about are the themes of their life that they enjoy the most, such as, do you like helping people? Does that turn you on? Okay, well, perhaps we don't need to worry about exactly how you accomplish that. Let's just focus on the fact that whatever it is, it has to have as a primary byproduct of doing it, assisting and helping other people. It's really strange. I'll just share this little digression related to that statement. Probably over the last 20 years, the amount of females that I've bumped into that have really lamented at length about helping disabled children, helping people in need. And they said, this is what I really want to do with my life. In that time, I've never really seen it happen. I know one friend that is on the opposite end of the spectrum. They're helping older people. But everyone else just talks, they talk about that being a destiny, but none of them ever get the career in it. You know, it's strange. I guess they realize that volunteering for a living doesn't pay any bills. It's very interesting. Well, let's go with destiny, purpose, and love, and just kind of keep those three things interconnected for a split second. The one caveat to purpose that may not connect to love. And, you know, in my book, this is more of a fable than reality, but it still illustrates the point beautifully. And for those of you who believe, you're going to absolutely get this. When Christ gets on a cross and dies, it's his purpose in the story. Now, I'm not sure how much he loved the idea of getting whipped, getting nailed, getting crucified, getting stabbed, being unappreciated by a large percentage of the crowd. I'm not sure he loved it. And of course, he is an ultimate hero of ultimate heroes among men, especially those who believe in him, of course. So I'm going to say that's the only distinction I understand in my mind that separates perhaps purpose and love. I made an episode in this garage, which I will redo at some point, called Becoming a Man, or Being a Man, because I think it's a lost art. The amount of whiny bitches out there is just unbelievable. And then the amount of people that think that being overtly gangster is being a man. It's a joke. You have guys that think that beating people in the face makes them a man while they have 4 or 5 kids at home while they're in the penitentiary. And they're talking shit about being a man. So give me a break, dude. Absolutely fail. But there are people that do know. They sacrifice. That their purpose is to be sort of a sacrificial lamb. Think about a mom who has 3 jobs to put her kids through school, to provide for them. Same thing with a father. Even a father just with 1 job, or a mother with 1 job, you lose your family. If you're able to support your family, mom can stay home and she gets to have the intimate, close relationships with the offspring, and dad's working his ass off and never meets his kids for any length of time because he's always exhausted. That's the way it was for centuries and centuries and centuries. The destiny in that point would be to have children and raise them well. But the sacrifice to execute that plan could be horrendous. You never know, right? Destiny. Does it exist? In my mind, the way the word has been defined is a little too absolute. Perhaps even a little too powerful in its story arc for all the opportunities that are available in this day and age. The reason I want to dissect this a little bit more is that I don't want anyone out there feeling like you're a failure because there's some perceived destiny in your mind and you're missing it. If you're still trying to sort out what the hell I'm talking about here, let's think about 2 words real quickly. Destiny and goal. Doesn't goal sound like a subset of destiny? Several goals to get to your destiny? But destiny has like a crown made of gold with purple, emeralds in it. We often hear, a lot of us talk about, this is my crowning achievement. It happens, man. You write the best book, your best movie. But let me warn you, this is where we're getting into the second half. Let me warn you about destiny. I believe that destiny is probably too strong of a word to describe any moment in my particular life. In the lighter sense, it definitely has truth. I moved from the Midwest to California. That was one of my destinies. But it was a destiny I created when I was 17 years old, with a 17-year-old mind, albeit slightly more mature than some of the kids I was hanging out with. But in the end, I had, at best, knowledge with no experience. Recca Stowe. Obviously wanted to be a father. Got that worked out. Want to raise a good kid. So far, so good. Definitely want to become a programmer. And I was done with that really fast. But here's the thing. Building yourself up to a destiny can be dangerous because you can get it way faster than you ever imagined. And then what do? Now, if you, and I got stories for all these things, but let's just say that in getting your destiny, somehow there was $50 million as a reward of gaining that destiny. Okay, that's a very tiny slice of folks that actually have those two associated with each other. But let's say you come away with some monetary reward and you're able to pay your bills and think about things, and you can enjoy life for a year or two with this cash. Hopefully you're investing in something to make sure it doesn't run out. Okay. But what if you're just an average Joe like me? You get your destiny and you got a paycheck. Oh, whoop-de-doo, you get a bonus check. Okay, it's not going to change your life. Now what do? Now what do? I will tell you that the answer is actually, I wouldn't say frightening, but I would definitely caution anyone who's about to achieve their destiny in a way that it becomes a finite moment in time. You wrote a movie, did really well. You get an Oscar. All right, now what? Is writing an Oscar-level film easy? Hell no. Is getting it greenlit by somebody easy? Hell no. Is the casting and production, pre-production and post-production, distribution easy? Hell no. Because if it were, we'd have amazing movies every single day in the movie theaters, and obviously we don't. You don't think the studios want to dig themselves out of their $5 billion worth of debt with China? I know musicians that dominated, not my super close friends, but acquaintances, that dominated the 80s rock, the glam rock, if you want to call it that. Sort of household names for a lot of folks that worship the particular bands that they're in. But the amount of members of these bands that rent rooms out of houses instead of even renting the house itself, about 60, 70%. Maybe they don't have to, but they choose to. I don't know. But they don't have enough money to handle it themselves. So they got their destiny, but they're broke. Oh, revered and loved by many. But who gives a shit when you can barely pay your rent? If someone says, hey, I want to come over to your house, chill out. And that person tries to find any other location on earth to meet because they don't want you to know. 5 or 6 platinum albums, maybe. Renting a room. There's a lot of Oscar statues in Hollywood and rented apartments. Every single year, someone is auctioning off their gold to pay the bills. And I think it has to do with, obviously, a changing trend in Hollywood from time to time. We know that, big, gigantic bands sometimes just fade away. And even though they can make a few bucks on a reunion tour, that's going to burn out pretty quick too. And there are legendary bands that never have any of those problems, like Kiss. But it happens to almost everyone that I know of. And the only protection you might have is money. Now, I live in Southern California, in Orange County. For those of you who don't know, and I didn't know this until I moved here, we have a lot of super duper rich neighborhoods. I mean mega rich. If I go down to the coast and cruise up and down PCH, I will see the world's finest vehicles on planet Earth, the most incredible, Bentleys and Lamborghinis and McLarens and experimental Porsches and all kinds of crazy stuff. There's essentially, I don't think there's a car that's legal to be in America that doesn't exist between Newport and Laguna. Someone has it. Exactly the same paint job you would have had. All the trimmings that you would have put on it had you had a fantasy bank account. But you see them by themselves in their cars. You'll meet people that know these people. And very, very, very few of them live in any destiny-based world. They're buying these cars and buying these homes to somehow fill up the gap that isn't being filled up by life. Very close friend of mine had a house built from scratch in one of the most affluent neighborhoods down here. The house was, I think, valued at nearly $30 million. It was nearly 40,000 square feet. 24-car garage downstairs with every single car you could ever want down there. 2 Lamborghinis, Bentleys and Porsches and everything. And she sold it. And I said, what did you think of that house? What were your thoughts? You're from the Midwest like me. You grew up in a normal home. Why would you sell it? And she said it was awful. She says, I designed the house. It was gorgeous, and I've seen it. It was gorgeous. Inside and out. She said, my family and I would barely ever see each other in the house. She said it was so massive that they had to have staff there nearly 7 days a week, just keeping the dust off the ground. She said, imagine, you're trying to come out of your shower and you want to walk down the hallway of your own home, either buck naked or in a towel. And the entire time you have people watching you. Not that they're not acclimated to that and, act like sort of the Downton Abbey staff, but still. You can't have a private conversation on telephone because someone's always within earshot. Now, I don't know how many of you would ever want a house that large anyway, but what if you got a 4,000 square foot house, These objects do nothing for you personally. And what's funny is I've met people that say that they are materialistic, that is the most important thing to them, and they are completely full of shit because the second they get all the materialistic objects, they immediately dial out. You can see that they either play 2 games. Well, sorry, they either play a game or they come to reality. The reality is that they start to admit that they're full of shit. The game they play has to do with trying to pretend like they weren't wrong in the first place. So they try to tell everyone how happy they are. I have a friend of mine that buys and helps design and create. He's a Hollywood guy, Hollywood designer. Great guy. But he has these crazy motorcycles made constantly. Or he'll buy a classic old motorcycle for like World War II. And he looks the part. When he drives them, he looks the part, 100%. Full-blooded German. But he constantly rotates the bikes. Sells them off, gets another one, sells it off. Because it doesn't really stick. It's sort of a game. He's very good at it. Why go on? Because I want to drill into your head that the most privileged people in the world will be the people that can teach you the fastest how full of crap we all are. You can buy the most fancy car on planet Earth, but in the end, within a month or two, it's just a car. And the more you drive up in a Lamborghini and park it, oh yeah, it might be fun at a restaurant or at a party or something like that, because it's kind of a onesie-twosie moment where you show up with this incredible vehicle. But if you drove it to work every single day, eventually it's just a car. You're hanging onto a steering wheel, you're pushing pedals, and the more privilege that you are able to get yourself through hard work, there's a lot of haters out there too. You're reminding them that they're missing something, and if they believe in destiny, oh my God, it's a double heart attack to their chest. Son of a bitch. We have lost the fabric of society when it comes to success. And hopefully we're about to enter an age in America where we're returning back to the basics. Everyone's so sure that the basics aren't any good. And I'll tell you what, man, like I've said several times on the show, if America was taken back 40 years, taken back 50 years, not in civil rights realm, not in women's rights realm, but in employment realm and business realm and how we run this country of America, you wouldn't be more happy than if it was like that, where you could graduate high school, get your sweetheart, get married, have your kids between the age of 18 and 22, at least start. One of you goes to work, earns all the money that your household needs. The other one stays home with the kids. Could be either one nowadays, right? We'd modernize a little bit. But as soon as the kids go to grade school and can take a bus home or whatever, and then go to daycare after that, they don't have to worry about you being there right when they get home. You can go back to work. So my old lady did. We don't have a system anymore. I always talk about the self, the family, and work. So let's review that when it comes to destiny. Well, the self is a little bit tough to talk about when it comes to destiny because it is sort of where you store the total of what you think your destiny was and how much you've actually been able to engage destiny moving forward, right? What do I mean by that? Well, you will take what you've accomplished in the family side and what you've accomplished in the work side, and you will sum total that up right into yourself. That'll be your perception of yourself when it comes to destiny. Do I have a spouse or a partner that satisfies me? Yes, no, well, maybe. That goes into the first slot of your total column. And there's one more that's waiting. Is what you do for a living the right thing? Is it what you're supposed to be doing? Now, some of you are smart enough to know that you shouldn't answer that in any sort of absolute unless you think you've reached it, because a lot of us understand that you have to take steps to get to where you're going. Pay your dues, right? I used to tell everybody who wants to get in the video game industry. I haven't lectured on that in a little bit, but that's not true. I do it actually once every quarter, but the real subatomic advice to getting into the video game industry is to start out in technical support. And the reason why is that you're taking phone calls from people that they're having problems with the game. They're not understanding the interface. The game has a bug. Then you move to QA, quality assurance, and you test the game. And right away, you're like, guys, it's very important that we get rid of these bugs, because if we don't, technical support pays the price. And I was just there, and those are my friends, and I don't want to get in a bunch of phone calls because we're lazy fucks sitting here in QA, screwing off. And then when you get into game design or game production, however your company's set up, you're like, guys, this interface doesn't work. Everyone got confused. But if you just put this red dot here and move this line over here, everybody gets it. So let's design better. So you go through and pay your dues, and you will understand more of what's going on than most people who got privilege, got to move in. The worst thing you could do is get a degree and have a video game company say, yeah, you can skip all these lowbrow steps and move straight to the top. You don't know shit, and you're fucking everything up, But let's go back to self, family, and work. Now let's just dabble in self for a split second, because it is truly where you should start your destiny measurements. This isn't going to come to any surprise for some of you. And for those of you that believe what I'm about to say, I want to make sure that you get the accolade that you deserve, because it's a big accolade. Becoming an honest person. An honest person who has not only sympathy for other people, but empathy. You can feel what someone else feels just by looking into their eyes, just by listening to their voice on the phone, just by looking at, a homeless person's gesture. You know how to behave around others. You want to make yourself just a real asset to the world. Regardless of anything you've accomplished in the other two realms, you are a walking asset to humanity. You are absolutely the scaffolding to the lower part of the pyramid, right? I want to clarify too. I keep saying rebuilding the bottom of the pyramid. Perhaps I'm making the wrong analogy. If you have a capstone, a perimeridian stone to a pyramid, then you probably have some corruption up at the top. I guess what I should be saying is, we sort of want to obliterate a pyramid scheme way of running the world by educating the pyramid itself in the absurdity of its own form. But you have to listen to my episode on politics, and it is not what you think. If you haven't heard it yet, it's people who listen to it really enjoy it, and it just has to do with building a society on a remote island from scratch. And in the end, you will see how a pyramid is a natural formation of society when you start dealing with the various issues of society, right? But if you are a good person, and again, you're not perfect, okay? No one is. Yes, you'll have regrettable moments in your past because you aren't a robot. And that's sort of hopefully a pleasant realization for you, right? So that's the part that we want to begin the destiny in the other two compartments with. Get yourself straightened out. Get your psyche straightened out. Feel good in your own skin. Doesn't matter what size you are, what color you are. It doesn't matter at all. Now, what's interesting, I should note, is that I always say self, family, and work. However, Usually for most people, it travels in slightly different order. It's self, work, and then family, because between the age of whenever you start working in the workforce, a lot of us don't have our spouses figured out. And so we work and we build something that makes us have our own sense of purpose and pride. And as we become more confident and accomplished in our own skin and we exude this accomplishment, again, it doesn't have to be anything major, just some, right? A lot of ladies are out there going, at least from my perspective, they're going, look, I don't want to date anybody that's not employed. I'm not here to raise my husband. I'm not here to support him unless we have an agreement. So work is probably second, right? I've talked about on the show several times the lottery ticket formula. This idea that somehow you will win the lottery and all of your financial woes will go away. All life's strife will go away, right? In fact, if you win $50 million, your body's automatically Arnold Schwarzenegger. Except you could speak English a little better. Doesn't work like that. Doesn't work like that at all. I've got plenty of friends of mine who flipped from being, paycheck to paycheck to having more money in the bank than they'll spend in their entire lifetime. And when I look in their face, I know a couple people that seem to be really enjoying it, but man, it's like, in fact, maybe only one at this point in my life. One guy that I know that made quite a bit of money out of Zynga came at the right time, came out. I'm not even sure how long he worked there. He got his stock options and got out. Good for him, man. And he's traveling. He just has smiles on his face constantly. Maybe I have two. An old boss of mine that worked for 15 years building a company, finally sold it off, and he's doing exactly the same thing, So other than those couple moments, and again, those two people haven't finished their life yet either. We don't know how the story's going to end for them. Maybe they get broke. Maybe they play their cards right. Hopefully, everything's going to be fine for them. But the folks that I know that still have inexhaustible money in the bank account, they've learned that they have sort of duped themselves into thinking if one thing happens, another thing happens, right? If I get a bunch of money, I'm happy. No. What makes them continue to work, regardless of how much money they have in the bank, is purpose, feeling useful. So do you need a bunch of money to feel useful? Nah, not at all. Are you kidding me? Huntington Beach, the way we do our trash is we have to separate it into organic, recycled, and normal trash. 3 bins. We put them out on the sidewalk once a week, and the trash trucks come by. Usually they're sort of immigrant workers. And I look at them and I think, wow, when we're raised as children in America, and someone says, well, what do you want your job to be when you grow up? You never hear trash man. Never hear that one. But every time I see these guys in these amazing behemoth trucks that, have the crane that comes out and picks it up and throws it over the edge. Every single time I see these guys, I just think, thank God for these individuals that are willing to drive these trucks. And I always pray for them to have a fairly short day. Get in early, get out early, go enjoy your family, go see a movie, go to dinner, enjoy yourself. Hope their pay is good. I don't know. They certainly work their asses off. For me, the purpose of their life, of their contribution to society, it's probably one of the most distinctly important jobs that exist on planet Earth. We've seen New York City in the 70s, when the trash wasn't being picked up, and it was awful. It destroyed society. It made you walk down the street smelling piss and urine and barf and all kinds of weird shit. Because these guys are equipped with the machines that they need and the knowledge that they need, it doesn't matter if they're a PhD or they can't speak a single sentence of English that isn't broken. Their purpose is massive. And they're enabling all of us to have our lives be clean so we can go on and do what we're supposed to do. There's the movie Office Space, written by Mike Judge, the guy that created Beavis and Butthead. Came out in 1999, I believe. And man, is he put a brilliant lesson in that movie. It's one hell of a funny comedy. If you haven't seen it, go see it, rent it, download it, whatever you got to do. You'll find out that people have been saying lines from that movie around you for probably the last 10 years. And it'll give you a little bit of sort of cultural compatibility with Gen X people, which might be your boss, depending on how old you are. But the big lesson in this film was that there was a software engineer who basically got his job, had a good career, had some shitty bosses, and through a mishap of hypnotism to make him not give a shit about his job, the hypnotist dies in the middle of the process, leaving him hypnotized. It takes him about a week to get out of the hypnosis, and he starts acting like he doesn't give a shit, but he immediately loses all of the tension off his soul. He got the job because it was just sort of grabbing the tail of the person in front of him. It wasn't his destiny to be there. Or if it was long shredded as his destiny. And the coolest thing about it is that, without spoiling the movie at all, at the end of the film, he turns into a construction worker. And his old office mates, that they've gone through this big journey together, which I'll let you watch and enjoy the film, they come to him and say, look, we got another engineering job for you at this other company, and they're really great, and they pay well. And he's shoveling some debris into the back of to a wheelbarrow. And he just takes one look at them, and he goes, no, I don't think so. I'm good. And they nod their head because they get it. And what they get is the following. Engineering wasn't his destiny. The theme of his life is most likely, I want to come to work and accomplish something every single day. And when I go home and put my head on my pillow at night, I want to be physically exhausted so that I can sleep well. But 2, I don't have any lingering concerns that by the time that the sun rises in the next day, that I won't be able to finish something I start. In a construction job, you will always finish something that you start. As long as you go to work. You sawed a board. You put up a board. Put up something else, right? I personally watched in my career that same exact thing occur. My first job was running a movie theater at 13 years old. I lied on my application, said I was 14. My job was essentially to just do anything that they told me. Eventually, I would come in, unlock the place, do the concession, make sure all the reels were up to date in the projection booth, cut a reel, splice a reel, sell tickets in the front, call in the tickets to the agencies, sell the concession, help everyone else out, and then I would go home. Got a paycheck. It was a blast. And every single day, I was the same exact thing. And even though it was repetitive, every day I accomplished those tasks. Being 14, it was a blast to go, I got people who are coming in and working this place in their late teens or early 20s, and they can't figure out what I'm doing at 14. And then I came to California and became an engineer, a software engineer, an artist. And, even though every single day I would accomplish a considerable amount, the distance to actually finish a project became extremely elongated, right? When I was working for the TurboTax people, before it was called that, I was one of their first employees, and they started doing state packages, and I did New York State. My DNA is in all the New York State forms. It's a lot of forms. And even though I'd complete a form once a day, and my peers who were 10, 20 years older than me took a week to complete a single form, and they'd be packed full of errors, I was creating nearly flawless code every day. And so if it was a 16 form package, it took me 16 business days to finish a whole state. And so I became a star for a short bit. And then it was like I couldn't put my head down the pillow at night and say, I finished New York. I couldn't. It elongated. Then I got into the video game business. Well, geez, it takes 18 months to complete the fastest video game in the industry at the time, and usually it took more than 2-3 years. But now we just keep slaving and slaving and slaving, and elongated in my mind what it took to actually consider myself complete in any task, right? So imagine saying that there's a destiny there. The destiny was in the species of the work. I wanted to make video games. I made video games all the way through junior high and high school. I like engineering no matter what. I love architecting. I love illustrating. But the industry itself pounded out of me any sense of a destiny. There hasn't really been any sort of finality in destiny for me personally. You know what destiny's been for me? It's probably been for you as well. Destiny is really a starting line, not a finish point. A lot of you run marathons, and you'll have a perception of the marathon. Let's say you want to run a really famous marathon, the Boston Marathon. Well, some of you, when you're in line at the very beginning, surrounded by 10,000 people, about to run a marathon, that's the destiny. I am about to run in the Boston Marathon. Of course, some, lanky African guy is going to kick everyone's ass, I'm not going to win it, but I got here. Some of you are so physically apt, you might think, well, maybe I can win it. And some of you say, well, my second destiny is really to finish the marathon, right? And hopefully you have practiced enough to do it. For some of you, winning is everything, and anything less is complete failure. And for you, I sympathize. So let's just say that you find a comfortable spot in your work to balance out the notion of destiny being sort of a facade, a dream, a non-existent thing to bait you when you're not mature enough to understand its true nature, that it is a daily battle. There's no finality. Do bills ever stop? No. So you got to be careful how you perceive destiny. Hampton Fincher, who wrote Blade Runner, it was an old stuntman. He wasn't old physically, but he was a stuntman for quite a while. He optioned Philip K. Dick's book, Do Robots Dream of Electric Sheep? He took 3 to 5 years to really get it noticed. Blade Runner comes out. It doesn't do that well back in 1982, but it's become an absolute cult classic for those of us who like film noir or future noir and sci-fi and all that good stuff. Well, he went on to write some pretty amazing stuff, let me tell you. But I'm sure it was tough for him to have written a film that, for at least those people who got it back in the day, there's a lot of us that got it in the Midwest, not Midwest, a lot of us that got it, that film in the mid-'80s. We got it immediately. You see it, and we just think, oh my God, this is one of the best films ever made. But he still has to eat. As much as he might have got an average paycheck, because again, the film didn't do that great in 82. Tron came out the same year, didn't do that great. Both films considered absolute cult classics now. It's a daily battle. Think of a destiny as a fairly extended timeline, pretty much from when you start the marathon. The finish line is your death or your retirement if you're so lucky. But beware of retirement. Retirement is sort of a way of sunsetting your brain, sunsetting your cognitive awareness and reality, because we have to use our brains to keep our brains. We can't blow it off. If you don't solve problems with your mind, then your mind disappears. In the Midwest, we see a lot of housewives become grandmothers, at least in my era. And a lot of them suffer dementia pretty badly, which is just essentially the mind starts to drift, right? Obviously, we all are aware that toxins were introduced into the food supplies, but a lot of these people never drank a Diet Coke, never used margarine. In fact, they professed that all those artificial ingredients were horrible. They didn't know why, but somehow they felt it. Okay. But I'll be honest, between my two grandmothers, both amazing women, one of my grandmothers raised 5 kids, and then obviously by the time she was in her 50s, it was all done. And they all did extremely well, so she had very little to worry about. She helped raise me. I was 15 years ahead of the next kid in line in terms of grandchildren, so I got a full exclusivity to my grandparents, and I lived in the town that they lived in. I win. But that grandmother suffered from dementia a lot earlier than my other grandmother. My other grandmother was a teacher for 36 years, remained extremely intellectual her whole life, was really engaged in the metaphysics of the world, and she was able to prolong her mind by probably about 5 years. She did lose her mind at the end. Again, she was extremely strict about her food supply not being, polluted by things. So beware of retirement. My friends in Hollywood that have made legendary things happen, none of them are retired. They don't want to retire. They have reached their destiny in what they want to do with their career, but every single day is a battle. I have, at least two friends in Hollywood that are my mentors in various arts, writing and design, and they have enough money in the bank. They could probably just retire, but they don't want to. Why? Their skill sets are just more sharp today than they ever were. And so they enjoy life, and they continue participating. Others have to work, but they love it. They don't regret it at all. They go get their paychecks, no matter how old they are. The youngest of that bunch is probably in his late 60s. And the oldest is in his early 80s. All of them work. All my rocker buddies try to get on the road constantly. And most of them do. Constantly, right? Enough said. Family. Well, let's think about this, right? If I said, okay, this is your first day on the job, doesn't matter what that job is, and I say, okay, you take that and you put it over here and you do this, and you tippity type on your computer and you use the internets here and you do this and all that. And if you just do that every single day and you output this unit of result, I got this paycheck over here based on however many hours you invest in that job. Done deal. Mathematical formula of participation, right? Now, does Hollywood really write films about that? Do they have job-loving films? No. Hollywood puts forth, and I mean television as well, of course, puts forth romantic destiny films. Titanic had an arc of that kind. Most of us can't engage in any dark side, light side Star Wars arc, so we're sort of relegated to the beautiful reality that we have. In the area of family, in a world where divorce is considered not a if, but a when, it's very tough, right? It's extremely tough. Some of you find the most amazing people and you are rooted together for the rest of your life, and destiny for you is very tangible. Probably something you perhaps even use in conversation. Except when you meet other people that are struggling, or a single person in your friend circle that's trying to find what you have. You probably are, if you're empathetic, very cautious about using any association with finding another person to spend your entire life with and destiny, because you realize you lucked out. But think about the pressure in all categories of life that the word destiny puts on you. Now, some of that pressure is fantastic. Some of the imperative steps that one must take when considering destiny is go out and find it. Try to find the thing that satisfies you the most in self, work, and family. And realize it's probably going to be in that order. Now, some of you are extremely fortunate to find the love of your life in your teens, and despite all the odds of you working it out with your high school sweetheart, some of you do. I've got probably, out of 125 kids that graduated from my high school, I think at least 2 or 3 in my class have actually pulled it off. And they're happily married to this day. Now, some of them struggle with self. They love their spouse. There's no problem there at all. They love their children. No problem there at all. But they don't like perhaps who they've become as an individual. And so it's sort of, you go to where your problems are in life, and that's usually how you surmise how well your day is going, how well your life is going, right? One of my friends from high school married into a very wealthy family at 18 years old, got married, absolutely loves life. And then I went back for a high school reunion, and he was there, and someone whispered in my ear, yeah, he's really depressed right now. And I'm looking at this whole equation, I'm thinking, Jesus, well, okay. Now, just to confirm, right, he's never had to work in his life, right? Nope. Well, he doesn't seem to be entitled at all. He doesn't seem to, throw his money around or anything. He's very respectful to everyone. He's a great person. How on earth could this guy be depressed? Who knows? Perhaps having never really engaged a purpose, perhaps having everything taken care of, took it out of him. When he looks in the mirror, the self equation just falls flat. Now, one can hope that in the relationship side of things, that the person who's been with him his whole life is willing to ride the whole thing out. And I think that's actually the case in his particular case. And, he could be totally different today. But I've watched it happen. I've watched that happen in Los Angeles. As I've repeated several times on the show, I've spent a lot of time talking to what I call super couples. Couples that are a bit like that. They met each other early. My God, the only trials and tribulations they've allowed in their life are external to them, their own journey. But when I ask them, how do you do it? If I want to be in your shoes and feel that successful, what's the trick? And they said, when we wake up in the morning, we don't always love each other. And we realize that. But we choose to be together, and we choose to love each other. Big difference. Big difference. You realize that someone is your partner in crime, no matter how bad it gets. And that's the beauty of the universe, is the ability to tolerate differences, to not let it in your life, to not buy into Hollywood formulas for goddamn sure, to keep pop culture away from your life. I think most of you know that, right? You don't go into magazines to find out how to treat your spouse, how to reimagine your spouse. I mean, this trend started, I think officially in the early 80s, where, women's magazines would, and it's been going on for way before that, but prior to the 80s, it would say how to keep your man happy. And it was a bunch of obviously subservient approaches that, when done with love, will definitely liven up the relationship in a lot of cases. But by the 80s, the cultural mechanism was to say, read these 10 items in a magazine. And sadly, it was pointed at females, which ended up with the feminist movement, right? But we want you to reimagine not only your spouse, we want you to reimagine the opposite sex. And to the point that almost subliminally, they become monsters, inconsiderate. Even though the people would be married to or in relationships with people that exuded nothing of the sort. Anytime that individual would have a bad day or not be, all bowl of cherries, they would start interpreting it through a different lens, to demonize anything that was other than perfection. And slowly they infected the minds of women. And on the other side of the game, within the female barrier, and for the female realm, I'll get to the males in just a second here, they started to exacerbate entitlement. They started to demonize raising children. They started to minimize the role of a mother with their child. You don't want to be stuck at home with the kids. Why should he be the one that gets to go out and experience life while you're stuck at home raising children? That whole thing. And they did it from a million different angles, from a million different articles in women's magazines, television show scripts, movie scripts, until the point the females fought to join what men had been calling for centuries, for millennia, the rat race. The one thing that never occurred during the feminist movement of the 70s was to have women sit down with men and say, well, what do you think of being a man? What do you think of going to work every day? What do you think of the burden of literally raising every dime that this family has to survive on? What do you think about that process? Because had they done that, the men would have said it sucks. In most cases, men would be like, yeah, I love my job, but God, it just turns into a grind. It doesn't matter if you're a director for movies or you're a musician on stage playing a guitar and every, bimbo in the audience wants to give you sexual favors before and after the concert. It's still a grind. And in the end, it sort of sucks more than it's great. I like the money. I do like being recognized for my skill sets. But in the end, there's at least 51% of this constant grind that sucks. And honey, I'm telling you, man, what you do as a mother is more important to this world than anything you could possibly do in the private sector. It is, quite frankly, the toughest job, dealing with the personalities of our offspring, which, as you know, they're not carbon copies of us. They're their own human beings with their own instincts, sometimes completely an opposite polarity to our upbringing. You got the toughest job, the most important job. And by the way, unless we have 20 kids, you will join the workforce if you want to. But I'll do everything I can to keep you out of that rat race, because it's not fun. But that conversation never took place. Pop culture got into the minds of women, funded by the Rockefeller organizations that wanted women to be taxed. They wanted the other half of the money, and they wanted those kids to be stuck in government programs to indoctrinate them. So they didn't have to read Cosmopolitan magazine. They could just be indoctrinated from the ground up. To hate all the wrong things, to value all the wrong things, and to completely miss the destinies that had been put in place for millennia. Men. Well, men, I think the funny thing is that, again, we have Mad Men, the show that was on television. And, I'd ask my friends, I said, well, what's Mad Men about? Because I never watched it. Still haven't watched it. They said, it's like the workforce in the 50s and 60s. There's a lot of chauvinistic, misogynistic behavior, men slapping women on the asses, all this stereotypical horseshit that I'm sure existed back in those days, but not that much. The only thing I ever saw as a kid that I can say was in that realm was that the females of the office were typically the secretaries. They were typically responsible for making coffee. There was still a cleaning crew that emptied trash cans. I never saw any of that crap happen where the women had to go and sweep up bathrooms. Nah. There was always a cleaning crew, even in the teeny tiny town of Chanute, Kansas. I'm unaware of it because I did the job at night. That's why I know. I used to sweep up offices to make some extra money as a kid. But my uncle was an optometrist my whole life, and he had a female in the front. And I'm not sure they even made coffee at his office, but she was revered. There was probably 3 or 4 women that went through his office over the course of 40 plus years, and they were always treated with incredible respect. Quite frankly, he would yield to her for everything that he had assigned her, such that she had plenty of responsibility. I used to get my glasses made by him, and I had to go through her. And I would send her flowers after every order. And I lived in California, and so I would call the flower shop in my hometown and have them delivered to the office for her. That's how we treated women. And she raised 3 amazing kids. Amazing assets to our hometown to this day. First-class human beings. So she raised them and she went into the workforce. And I think she worked for my uncle for almost 20 years, the last woman. The idea is that men were out of control. Well, I can tell you in my hometown, if an employer smacked his female employee on the ass or did anything remotely aggressive outside of the realm of well-behaved gentlemen, it would be the talk of the town. That guy would have a scarlet letter on him so heavy-duty, I'm not sure anyone would go back to him. But you know what? It never happened in my eyes. It never happened. And I worked at these locations. It was always the normal courtship process of, hey, I like the woman that works there. Either she owns the business or she works there. And you would go and visit, and you'd buy a bunch of crap you don't need at that particular location. Eventually develop the guts to ask her out, and the process began. But you'd bring her flowers. You'd get the door for her, both the car door and the door to the house and all that good stuff. That's the way it was. When supposedly everything was falling apart. The reason why I mentioned that classic experience that I had, and when I moved to California, if someone wants to say, oh, but the coast was way different. Okay, first company I worked for had a CEO that was a woman. The TurboTax people, Susan Morgan. Her husband, Michael Morgan, invented the product. She's in charge of the company. Consequently, the staff, I think, was 40% female when I got there, and by the time 2 years had passed. It was 60% female. And these women were in charge, people. At least of the executive staff, it was 50 to 60% female, and the rest of the staff were just cross-pollinated, male-female. If you knew how to do the job, you got the job. And the performance record of the females was fantastic. It's the men that got themselves all tied up in drama. The reason why I mention this archetype that I experienced versus the one that's been propagated through film, television, books, magazines, all this pop culture horseshit that's turned into this absolutely acidic, irrational movement of today, is that if you want to hold down any concept of destiny within family, you're going to have to realize that you're going to have some basic principles and foundational understandings and religions within the people that you want to pick for your family, basically whoever you're going to build your family with. If you want to have kids, you have to go with the opposite sex, of course. But you're going to have an understanding that there is a lot of bullshit out there, and that neither one of you are going to subscribe to it. I know you feel me there. So, in closing, I just want to say that I believe, and the catalyst for this episode is for me to say to you, having had probably, at least half a dozen careers, totally unrelated in some cases, some of them are complementary, in my lifetime, meaning I made all my money to pay all my bills with different careers, having thought I would never have the opportunity to have the career ever. In the end, destiny is sort of your beacon. It's a direction more than a finite point in time. And if you do reach a finite point in time that you would classify as destiny, I'm willing to bet that all it is a starting line. It's not a finish line. You have a destiny to make video games, perhaps. But when you finish it and you deploy it, the only destiny you can really attach at the end of the game is to say, I want it to go platinum. I want it to sell 1 million units. Maybe you could say that's your destiny. Depends on how much of the pie slice you get as to whether or not you need to do it again. At that point, if you have to do it again to survive, it's going to take the edge off destiny. So I think that word could be used to almost make you feel negative more than it can make you feel positive. And I don't want you to feel negative. It's a vector, all right? I think you get me. This episode's gone on pretty long here. Some of you dig these episodes a lot more than you dig the other ones, so that's why I throw them out every once in a while. If you dig the series, please subscribe. If you like this particular subject matter, please thumb it up. Realize the show is a variety show, if you haven't already figured that out. We're doing well. The show is on a podcast as well. So if you need to get it through iTunes or your favorite podcast reader, go to deepthoughtsradio.com and click the little RSS feed icon from your mobile device or the device with your podcast reader on it. It will know what to do. It'll throw you to your favorite podcast application. It's been set as your default app on your Android. It'll throw you to iTunes on your iPhone. You can get it on iTunes. I forgot to mention, too, that iTunes has a review mechanism in it. So you're able to review and type in a little thing. Someone actually got one through on the iTunes. iTunes has this bizarre thing that they need a certain critical mass of reviews before they show the first one. So anyway, if you feel inclined, get over to iTunes and give me a little review. That'd be awesome. I don't usually pump anything, so that'll be my one pitch for that. I wanted to say that folks have asked me for a Patreon account. And so I keep forgetting to paste at the bottom of all the videos, but on YouTube. So I'll start pasting those in on YouTube. There's quite a few that have them, but it's just a pain to constantly edit all the videos and put it in there. So if that's your thing, I definitely appreciate it. I almost want to put out a challenge here just so that you feel like you've made a change. One of the things I need to do, my AdSense account's actually expired. Or whatever, or actually, no, it didn't set up correctly or something. That's why there's no ads on any of these things. They're at a point where they have to pay me now on YouTube, which I think is about maybe $100, maybe, or $75. Maybe it's probably $50 actually, honestly. And so they've shut down my ads until I give them a way to pay me, so they don't accrue any more debt because there's a bunch of government policies about that sort of thing. So I'll get that turned on as well. My goal is this. This is a 1080p camera. I think it's about $600. There's the 4K cameras are out there. Last time I checked 2 years ago, it was about $1,700 for a 4K camera. I'm sure that's come down quite a bit, given our freaking cell phones have them. So, but they don't have the kind of capacity to hold these long shows. So one of the things I thought might be kind of fun is if we could raise enough money for the 4K camera, and I won't put in money, right? I'll just make the episodes. Then if you see it in 4K, you're like, I made that 4K. I thought that might be kind of interesting. It's a lot of money, though. I have to figure it out. So if you have recommendations for a good 4K camera for such a thing, maybe we can find the cheapest one that does the trick. Takes a 64 gig. If it takes a 64 gig card, it will consume obviously about 4 times the space. So I probably have to drain it per card. This particular card at 1080p can do about 3 shows. If I make them all 1 hour, it can do maybe 4 shows, but it gets kind of scary at that point. There's nothing worse than filming, and then all of a sudden my little clock starts blinking going, I'm running out of space. I think the computer can only do about 2 hours before Logic just simply shuts it down and goes, you're done. Anyway, a little bit of metadata there. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you in the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.